Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is my pregnancy story with this gorgeous rainbow baby of ours called Lila Rose. So I thought I'd include her in the introduction because obviously the story is all about her, but there is no way I could do this whole video with you in it. No way, she's not that patient. So I'm gonna go hand her over to Daddy and I'm gonna carry on this story. Okay, so baby free for now. So first thing I want to say is this is not a bragging story that I fell pregnant straight away after miscarrying. Not at all. I would not want to brag about something that was the hardest thing we as a couple have ever had to go through. I simply want to make this video because it's good to look back and see what an incredible story this is, and for me to be able to look back and use it as almost like a video diary, but also for people out there that are going through a miscarriage right now or even had miscarriages, is to hopefully give those people hope that there is a chance of having a normal pregnancy after miscarriage, whether you get caught straight away like I did, or I know lots of people who have had miscarriages and a couple months on they have fell pregnant again and have gone on to have very healthy, happy babies. So I'll start with the story, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I will talk a little bit about the miscarriage and also share with you how we got pregnant, not like all the details of how we got pregnant, but how we got pregnant, what we did, how we found out that we were pregnant, and also a little bit about the pregnancy as well. So without going into too much detail, I miscarried at 6 weeks and it kind of came with like a period cramping, and I bled for 8 days and then it just completely stopped. So it was almost like having a period. Obviously we knew for a couple weeks that we were pregnant, so I can't even explain it. Like, we just got used to the fact that we were about to become parents and we were excited, we were ready, and suddenly it just all got taken away from us. I can't really explain what that feeling was like, but it left us feeling like, what now? We were ready to become parents, like our lives were ready to change, and all we could see in our future was us being parents, and it was taken away. So what now? Where do we go with our lives now? People tried telling me really nicely that maybe your body just wasn't ready and maybe it's just not your time to become a mum, and I took that very harshly, and as a couple we decided that we would try again. So we started trying the day after I stopped bleeding, and after doing a lot of research I worked out that if you actually do the deed every other day, it actually maximizes your chances of getting pregnant. The idea of that is that the man's stuff, that's what we're going to call it, needs to be able to build up over the course of like 48 hours so that it's at its best quality, ready to kind of fertilize the egg. So I never actually realized that. You think the more times you do it, the more chance you're going to get pregnant, but that's not actually the case. So if you are trying, every other day is what's best. So we were told that we were allowed to try again immediately if we wanted to, but they do advise that you wait until your first period so that you know exactly when the date is, or roughly they can work out when the date is that you actually conceived, because it's not so certain when you've had a miscarriage. But they did say you can try straight away. So we as a couple decided that that is what we wanted to do. We wanted to go ahead and try again straight away. Even if we weren't going to get pregnant, it was definitely a way of us being able to connect through the most hardest time that we were ever going to have to go through. So with the miscarriage, I miscarried on the Tuesday. I classed the miscarriage as the actual Tuesday, and then obviously the bleeding was just kind of trying to get the miscarriage, or the baby out of my system. I was told to test 2 weeks later to make sure that everything was definitely out of my system. There was no way that I could have waited 2 weeks. I really struggled. I felt like the longer I waited to find out if the test was going to come back negative and that everything was out, the more I felt like the baby's death was just getting dragged out for longer and longer, and I just needed to grieve. I needed to be able to just put closure on the whole situation. So I was a little bit cheeky and I did the pregnancy test early. So a week after the miscarriage I checked to see if everything was out of my system, because I had just stopped bleeding, so I thought there must be everything kind of flushed out by now. It did come back negative, so that was kind of closure, and we thought, right, we need to move forward from here. So here's where it starts to get complicated. We started ovulation strips, but we didn't start them until 2 weeks after the miscarriage, because I figured I should be ovulating around about 2 to 3 weeks after the miscarriage if I'm going to have my period within 4 to 6 weeks. So if you don't know how that works, ovulation strips obviously test your ovulation, which is only a 48-hour window, and if you do them every other day, you're bound to catch exactly when you are ovulating. So 3.5 weeks after the miscarriage, I was still taking ovulation tests. They were still coming back negative, and I just thought, this does not seem right. I don't understand what's going on here. If my period was going to return within 6 weeks, then I should definitely have been ovulating around about the 3-week mark. So I decided to take another pregnancy test to make sure that everything was definitely out of my system and I was ready to ovulate and it came back positive. I tell you what, at this point I didn't even know what to do with myself. I was like, okay, what is going on? So I picked up the phone straight away to EPAC, who dealt with our miscarriage, and I said, look, I took a pregnancy test a week early and it came back negative. It's now 3.5 weeks later and I've just taken another one, it's come back positive. She said to me, there's either two things that could have possibly have happened. Either number one, your first test was a false negative and the baby was still in your system, so that's why it showed up as a positive 3.5 weeks later, or number two, your first test was right, it was negative, the baby was out of your system, and that would mean that you're pregnant. So I told Rick, who was like, no, there's no way that you're pregnant again. Obviously it was really hard to not get excited, like I didn't really know how to feel, and the woman on the phone suggested that you basically waited a week and you had to retest again. I tell you what, that week was the longest week of my life. It felt like forever, and I was doing the same as what lots of people do, where they're like, do I have symptoms, what do I feel? Let me tell you now, nothing. I felt nothing. There were no symptoms whatsoever. So because there was a chance that I wasn't actually pregnant, obviously we kept trying because we didn't want to miss it just in case that I was ovulating. So I kept taking ovulation tests for the next couple of days. I took one the next day after the phone call and it said I was ovulating. So I thought, okay, maybe the positive was the very last bit of the miscarriage happening and maybe that's out of my system now and I'm ovulating, obviously. So obviously we got on it and we tried. And the next day I took another ovulation test to check to see if I was still ovulating, and it says I was. So I was like, okay, so this is the 48-hour window, we've just happened to catch it. And then the third day I thought I would just definitely check again to make sure that I've stopped ovulating, and it came back positive again. So I was there googling it and it said that is pretty much impossible because your ovulation is only a 48-hour window. So at this point I started to think, I think I'm pregnant. So that day finally came when we could test a week later after that phone call, and it was another strong positive. And I've actually kept both the tests here that I took. So I'm going to show you. So the top test that you can see is the first one I took, and obviously you can see it is not as strong, but it was a definite positive. And then the second one below is that one that we took a week later, and you can see it's a very, very strong positive, and it got stronger. So that is one thing that I can say I did notice. With the first pregnancy I had a positive, but it was never ever as strong as either of those two tests. So without getting excited, I knew that something was different here. There was a definite positive, there was a definite strong positive, and that was just not the case in the first pregnancy. Don't let me scare you. If you've got a positive, then take it as a positive, but that was just something I noticed in correlation to the first pregnancy test I took with the first pregnancy. So then after that I also did a clear blue test, which if I find the picture I will put it on screen now, and it said 2 to 3 weeks, which basically means I ovulated and conceived about 8 or 9 days after my miscarriage, which is exactly why it didn't show on the ovulation test, because I didn't think I'd be ovulating until about 2 weeks after the miscarriage, so I didn't even try testing. So yeah, it wasn't all fine and dandy after that. Obviously we just had a miscarriage. It was extremely nerve-wracking, and we actually paid for 2 private scans before our 12-week scan on the NHS. So we did a scan at 6 weeks because obviously I miscarried at 6 weeks and I wanted to make sure that everything was okay. And then we also did a scan at 9 weeks. I can say now I didn't relax in the pregnancy until about 24 weeks. I was a very nervous mum. Every time we had a scan I felt like I didn't breathe until I knew that there was a heartbeat, and they would say straight away, yep, strong heartbeat, and I felt like I couldn't breathe until I heard that. It was very difficult. Thankfully it was a very easy pregnancy. That kind of made me anxious in itself because I was kind of breezing through the pregnancy and I was like, well, I should be getting these symptoms and I'm not. If you're kind of going through a pregnancy right now, then just try and tell yourself that it can be normal to not get anything at all, because that is exactly what I had. And all I kept telling myself was that I just had to let it go. I had to let go of control of whatever was going to happen, because at the end of the day I knew that me stressing out was not going to make any difference to the outcome of what was going to happen to our baby. And that's something that's really hard to get your head around. So yeah, that is the story of our beautiful Lila Rose and how she came about, and I really hope this helps you out if you are going through a miscarriage, or if you have been through a miscarriage, to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that you can have a healthy baby after having a miscarriage. And you never know, you could end up getting pregnant straight away like I did. So thank you for watching. If you like this video and you like this story time, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you leave if you haven't already done so, because I will be doing a labour and delivery story coming up, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!